If you pull the same weeds from the same patch every fortnight, you do not have a weed problem. You have uncovered soil, and uncovered soil always fills itself. I took 6 years to accept that on 2 heavy acres at the north side of the nursery. I dug grit in, hauled muck over, opened drains, and treated that clay as if persistence would make it become different ground. The weeds kept winning because they liked the place better than the plants I was forcing into it. In the end, I stopped fighting the site and planted what wanted to cover it. Once the leaves met, the light went off at soil level and most of the weed work ended with it. The ground had not beaten me. It had told me what the job was, and I had taken 6 years to listen. These 10 ground covers are for different kinds of difficult soil. I will tell you where each belongs, how far apart to plant it, and which useful-looking plants I would never turn loose in a border. Now then, before the 10, 4 things because the plants are the easy part. The first is that you have to clear the ground properly first, and this is where most ground cover planting fails. Putting ground cover into weedy soil does not work. It cannot. Your new plants are small and slow for the first year, and the existing weeds are established and fast, and they will smother the thing that was meant to smother them. So clear it first and clear it thoroughly. For annual weeds, chickweed, groundsel, bittercress, anything that pulls up easily, hoeing on a dry day and then a mulch will do. For perennial weeds with running roots, bindweed, ground elder, couch grass, you have to get all of it, and every fragment left behind grows again. The cheapest reliable way is to cover the ground and starve it. Cardboard or thick black plastic laid over the whole area, weighted down, left for a full growing season. It looks terrible for a year. It works. I know a year sounds like a long time. It is shorter than the 10 years you will otherwise spend pulling bindweed out of your new ground cover. The second is spacing, and it is the decision that costs the most money. Ground cover works by closing. The plants grow into each other until there is no gap and no light reaching the soil. Until they close, the ground is still open and you are still weeding. So the question is how fast you want it closed and how much you want to spend, and those pull against each other. Plant at 12 inches and it closes in a season and costs you a lot of plants. Plant at 24 inches and it takes 3 years and costs a quarter as much. There is no right answer, but there is a wrong one, which is planting far apart and then not mulching the gaps. That gives you 3 years of open soil between your ground cover plants, which is 3 years of weeding, which is the thing you were trying to stop. If you plant wide, mulch the gaps thickly and top it up every spring until they meet. The third is that you will still weed for the first year. I would rather say that plainly than have you think I am selling you a miracle. Year 1, you are weeding. Year 2, much less. Year 3, almost none. That is the honest timeline for nearly everything on this list, and the people who give up are the ones who expected year 3 in year 1. And the fourth is that ground cover is not the same as a lawn substitute, and I mean to be clear about which of these will take being walked on. Most of them will not. I will say so as we go. A fifth thing, and it is the one that saves you money before you spend any. Read the weeds you already have. They will tell you what your ground is doing, and you should match the ground cover to that rather than to a photograph. Moss, buttercup, horsetail, and rushes mean wet ground and probably compaction. Do not plant thyme or sedum there, whatever the label promises. Docks, thistles, and nettles mean fertile ground with plenty of nitrogen. That is good soil, and it will grow almost anything on this list, but it will also grow weeds fast, so you want something that closes quickly. Plantain and knotweed in a hard track mean compaction. Fix that before you plant anything or you will lose the lot. Chickweed and groundsel mean cultivated, disturbed, reasonably fertile soil, the ordinary condition of a border that gets forked over every spring. Sorrel and moss on acid ground suggest low pH, which some of this list minds and some does not. 10 minutes identifying what is already growing tells you more about a bed than any amount of guesswork, and it is free. Now for the 10. I have put them in order of how difficult the ground is, easiest first. First, hardy geranium, cranesbill, the best all-round ground cover for ordinary garden soil, and the one I would plant if I could only have one. Low mounds of divided leaves that spread sideways into a dense mat covered in violet, pink, or white flowers for months. It is not aggressive, it will not run through the garden, and it stops exactly where you plant it. It just gets wider. Sun or part shade, any reasonable soil, space at 18 inches. Where the job goes wrong is leaving it be in midsummer. Around July, it goes leggy and flops open and the center goes bare. And that bare center is an invitation. Cut the whole plant back to about 2 inches with shears, hard, all at once. Fresh growth comes within a fortnight, tighter than before, and it often flowers again. Roseanne is the one that flowers longest. Big root geranium, Geranium macrorhizum, is the one for dry shade under trees, and it is nearly indestructible. Second, epimedium, barrenwort. If you have dry shade, and dry shade under a tree is the hardest ground in any garden, this is the answer, and there is not a close second. Heart-shaped leathery leaves on wiry stems, often bronze-tinted in spring and again in autumn, with small delicate flowers in April. It makes a low, even carpet about a foot high. It is slow. That is the trade. 3 years to close at 18-inch spacing, and you will pay more per plant than for most things here. It is worth both. 1 job a year. Shear the old leaves off in late February, right down, before the flower stems come up. If you leave them, the tatty old foliage hides the flowers entirely, and the whole point of the plant is lost. Third, lamium, dead nettle. Silver-splashed leaves that light up a shady corner and pink or white flowers in spring. It spreads by rooting where the stems touch the ground, so it knits fast. Part shade to full shade, soil with a bit of moisture. Space at 15 inches and it closes in 2 seasons. Where the job goes wrong is buying the wrong one. Lamium maculatum, the spotted dead nettle, is well behaved and is what you want. Lamium galeobdolon, sometimes sold as yellow archangel, is a thug that will run 20 feet and through everything in its path. The names are similar and garden centers are not always careful. Check the second word. Beacon silver and white Nancy are both maculatum and both good. Fourth, ajuga, bugleweed. Flat, glossy rosettes, often bronze or purple, that spread by runners across the surface, with short spikes of intense blue flowers in May. Sun or shade and it will take damp ground. Space at 12 inches and it closes in a season, which is fast for something this low. It is the one on this list that takes light foot traffic. Not a path, but a place you cross occasionally is fine. 2 warnings. It will run into a lawn and it is difficult to get out again, so keep it away from turf or give it a hard edge. And in humid climates, it can get crown rot in a wet summer if the drainage is poor. Dead patches appear in the middle of the mat. Space it a bit wider where summers are muggy so air can move. Fifth, creeping thyme. For hot, dry ground in full sun where nothing else will grow. A mat an inch or 2 high, covered in pink or purple flowers in June, and it smells when you tread on it. Poor soil, sharp drainage, full sun. It will not tolerate shade, damp, or rich ground. The better you feed it, the worse it does. It takes foot traffic better than anything else here, which is why it is the usual choice between paving stones. Where the job goes wrong is planting it into ordinary garden soil and mulching it with bark. Thyme wants grit, and it wants grit right up to the stems. Bark or compost against it holds damp and rots it. Sixth, sedum. The low creeping sorts, not the tall autumn ones. Fleshy leaves in green, blue-gray, red, or gold, forming a mat 2 or 3 inches deep with starry flowers in summer. Full sun, poor sharp draining ground, drought entirely untroubled. It will grow on a gravel bank, on a roof, in the crack of a wall. It stores its own water. The one thing it cannot do is compete. It is low and slow, and if a weed germinates in it, the weed wins. So sedum is for ground where nothing much germinates anyway. Gravel, poor thin soil, hot slopes, and it is the wrong answer for a fertile bed. Seventh, wild ginger. Broad, glossy, heart-shaped leaves, low and dense, for full shade and soil that holds moisture. The European sort is evergreen and glossy. The American one is deciduous and softer and native across a good deal of the eastern half of the country. It is not fast, 2 to 3 years at 12-inch spacing, but it makes about the handsomest shade carpet there is, and slugs mostly leave it alone, which is more than you can say for hosta. It wants shade that is not bone dry. Under a maple, it will struggle. Under a high canopy tree with some moisture, it is ideal. Eighth, foam flower, tiarella. Lobed leaves, often with dark markings along the veins, and spires of frothy white or pink flowers in spring. Semi-evergreen, so it holds through most winters. Part to full shade, moist soil with some organic matter. The running sorts spread by surface stolons, the clumping sorts do not, So if you want it to cover ground rather than sit still, check what you are buying. Space at 15 inches. It is neither fast nor slow. It is a native across much of the eastern woodland, which means it goes with the ferns and the woodland bulbs and looks right in a way some of the imported ground covers do not. Ninth, and this is the first of the two I warned you about, vinca, periwinkle. Glossy dark evergreen leaves and blue or white flowers in spring, and it will cover ground in dense shade under trees on a dry bank where you have genuinely tried everything else. That is what it is for. That is the only thing it is for. Because vinca does not stop. It roots at every node along a trailing stem, and it moves outward relentlessly. And in a good many parts of this country, it has gone over the garden wall and into the woods, where it forms a mat that stops native woodland plants regenerating at all. It is listed as invasive in a number of states, and there is a reason for that. The greater periwinkle, vinca major, is considerably worse than the lesser, vinca minor. So, only in a place with a hard boundary it cannot cross, a paved edge, a wall, a mown strip you keep mowing, never adjoining woodland, a stream, or open country. Check your own state's list before you buy any, and if it is on it, do not. If your problem is dry shade and you do not want that fight, go back to epimedium at number 2. Slower, more expensive, and it stays where you put it. 10th, and the second warning, bugleweed's opposite number. I mean the running mints and their relatives, and specifically the one most often sold as ground cover, which is common mint. It will cover ground. It covers it the way water covers a floor. Underground runners, several feet a year, up through the middle of everything, and every fragment of root left behind starts again. I have seen a border lost to it in 3 seasons. If you want it, and it is a fine plant, grow it in a container. A bottomless bucket sunk in the ground works, provided the rim stands an inch proud so the runners cannot go over the top, and provided you check it every year. But do not put mint in a border as ground cover on anybody's recommendation. That is a piece of advice that gets repeated because it sounds sensible and because the person giving it has not been back to look 3 years later. What to plant instead for a similar effect in ordinary soil? Hardy geranium, number 1. It does the same job and it stops. 2 more worth naming quickly because they come up constantly and both need a caveat. Pachysandra, Japanese spurge. Glossy world evergreen leaves, dense, and it is the standard commercial answer for shade in a good deal of the country. You will see it under every bank of shrubs in a car park. It works. That is not in dispute. But it is a monoculture that nothing lives in. It is on the invasive watch list in several eastern states, and it has been hit hard by a leaf blight called volutella that runs through a whole planting and leaves brown dead patches you cannot cure. If you want that look without those problems, the native Allegheny Pachysandra, Pachysandra procumbens, is a different plant. Clumping rather than running, better looking to my eye, and it does not go over the fence. And English ivy. I will be blunt about this one, because there is no version of the advice that ends well. Do not plant it as ground cover. It does cover ground and then it climbs, and then it flowers and fruits and birds carry the seed into every wood within miles. It is one of the most damaging garden escapes in this country, and it is still sold in garden centers. If you have inherited it and it is contained by paving on all sides, that is one thing. Planting it new is another, and I would not. A word on what ground cover will not do, because it is oversold. It will not stop bindweed, ground elder, or couch grass. Those come up through anything. Through a mat of geranium, through vinca, through a foot of mulch, because they are running from a root system already established underneath. If you have those, the ground has to be cleared properly first, and no planting will do it for you. It will not fix compaction or drainage. A plant sitting on ground that holds water will sulk or rot, and covering it does not change what is underneath. It will not stop tree seedlings. Maple, ash, sycamore, whatever is dropping on your garden. Those seedlings have a seed's worth of energy behind them, and they push straight up through a carpet. You will still be pulling those, and they are easy while they are small and near impossible once they are 2 years old. Walk the bed in June and pull them then, and it will not look after itself entirely. What it will do is turn a fortnightly job into an annual one. That is a genuine and large improvement, and it is not the same as nothing. Now, planting it, which is quick. Plant in autumn if you can, warm soil, cool air, rain coming, and the plants get a whole season of root growth before they have to perform. Spring is second best. Do not dig individual holes and drop plants in. Prepare the whole area, because ground cover is a community rather than a set of specimens, and roots need to run between plants. Set them out on the surface first, in their pots, and stand back and look. Stagger them. A grid reads as a grid for years, and it is very hard to unsee once it is closed. Offset rows like bricks. Then plant, water each one in properly, and mulch 2 inches over the whole area, keeping it clear of the crowns. And then the important part. Water them through the first summer. Everything on this list is drought tolerant once established, and none of it is drought tolerant in year 1. And the commonest way to lose a new ground cover planting is to believe the label the 1st July. Now, keeping it right after it has closed, because there are 3 jobs and they are all small. Once a year, cut back whatever needs it. The geranium in July, the epimedium in February, lamium and ajuga get a shear over if they have gone tatty. That is an afternoon for a whole garden, once a year, against a fortnight by fortnight weeding round. Every 3 or 4 years, look for bare patches in the middle. Most spreading ground covers go thin in the center as they age, the same way a clump of anything does. The fix is to lift a section, split it, and replant the outer pieces back into the gap. It costs nothing because the plants are your own, and it is how you keep a carpet dense for decades rather than years. And patrol the edges. Everything that spreads will try to get where you do not want it, into the lawn, over a path, into a neighboring bed. Once a year, take a spade and cut a line down the edge and pull back whatever has crossed it. 10 minutes. That last one is the job people skip, and skipping it is how a useful plant becomes a nuisance you blame the plant for. One last thing about the mulch, because it does a job people underrate. Weed seeds mostly need light to germinate. Not all, but most. That is why hoeing disturbs soil and brings up a fresh crop, and it is why an undisturbed mulched bed gets quieter every year. So 2 or 3 inches of mulch, laid and left, is doing the same job as your ground cover for the year or 2 while the plants close. They are the same strategy at different speeds. And once the plants have closed, stop mulching. The plants are the mulch now. Adding more on top of a closed carpet just rots the crowns. Find the patch you weed most often and measure it. Choose one ground cover for the light, moisture, and soil that are actually there. Clear the perennial weeds properly, plant close enough for the leaves to meet, and mulch the open ground while they travel. Do not mix 5 kinds into a little patch. Repetition is what makes a ground cover look intentional and what closes the light out at soil level. Tell me the worst patch you have: dry shade, wet clay, hot gravel, or a slope. The site chooses the plant more reliably than a picture on a label. Weeds occupy empty ground. The lasting answer is to stop leaving it empty.